This is Real Murata photographer based in Tokyo. I typically never talk about lenses since I'm not a lens maniac or anything, but this is sort of like my first video related to digital. So basic background for you guys. In order to achieve film-like looks, you have only three options available if I'm right. One is buying a vintage type of lens made in the film era, and basically by using some kind of adapter, you basically mount that lens onto a mirrorless type of camera, maybe a DSLR actually, and shooting with it. Option number two is basically you purchase a lens from manufacturers, third-party manufacturers that make affordable manual focus type of lens, and they are being sold brand new. And option number three is basically doing it through post actually, which takes forever, so I don't want to talk about that. So in today's video, I'd like to talk about option number two, like purchasing from an affordable third-party manufacturers and using it on a mirrorless camera. And if I'm right, these third-party manufacturers, companies that I know right now as of 2022 is either going to be 7 Artisans, TT Artisans, Camlan, and Veltrox. I'm going to kick out Veltrox in this video because they make some kind of random autofocus type of lens which are not 100%, if I'm right, produce film-like looks, so I'm just gonna kick them out, and I have trust issues with them, and because I never used it. So yeah, that company goes out. So basically 7 Artisans, TT Artisans, and Camlan. So this brings to the title of this video of the TT Artisans 50mm f2, and a lot of people have been talking about this lens, and this is a lens that they recently sort of started selling in Japan, and due to supply issues and stuff like that, I think it was first started selling in the United States and North America, and then they brought it to Japan actually. So you can purchase this lens for less than $100, and I was really curious because I never used this brand, I never tried it, but because it was less than $100, I mean, it won't hurt, will it? So I purchased it with my hard-earned cash and tested it out to see and provide you guys with what I think about this lens. And full disclaimer, this video is not sponsored by TT Artisans, hoping that they will sponsor some of my future videos to come. So yeah, let's get going. Look at the price throughout the horizon of different manufacturers, Nikon, Canon, Pentax. It's hard to find lenses below $100 in near mint condition, you know. And when you purchase a vintage lens, the problem that arises is that there could be mold, there could be fungus, there could be some kind of dirt in the lens which could screw up your photos when you start shooting with it on digital. While this one is brand new, there's no dust, there's no fungus, or I mean, you don't have to meddle with those kinds of stuff on this lens. And for me, I basically went out to shoot this lens on my X-T4, which I basically use to make YouTube videos, and sometimes when I shoot photos, which I don't do that much until recently, until getting this lens, to see how it would perform. So I basically went to my favorite coffee shop in Tokyo, coffees being shop Takaido, which I made a video on, and I have to admit their coffee latte is the best and affordable actually for $2.50 or so. And while the owner there was brewing my coffee, you guys know if you go to a real coffee shop, it takes considerable time to get that order in and out. It takes 3 minutes, it takes 5 minutes or so. The longer it takes, the better the food is, you know, similar concept. So I'm going off topic, but yeah, while I was waiting for my coffee, I basically snagged a couple of shots within that shop, and especially the not the barista machine, the roasting machine caught my attention. So I basically snagged a couple of photos, and I have to admit the outer focus really looks really nice, especially when shooting with this camera, and not with this camera, with this lens actually, on the Fujifilm camera. And keep note that this lens is available in different mounts, so depending on what kind of camera system you go, Canon, Sony, Leica, Sigma, Micro Four Thirds, and Canon EFM mount, if I'm right, the results will look a little bit different because the color science for each and every camera manufacturers differ, so keep that in mind. And coming back to this TT Artisans and also 7 Artisans, actually, they both share a similar philosophy, similar concept of trying to sort of provide the consumers with affordable priced lenses as third-party manufacturers for different various camera digital mounts actually. And I guess they also share a common principle of sort of like trying to sell people fully manual focus lenses at an affordable price. I keep saying that over and over again, but it's interesting because us film photographers, we're used to using, manual focus lens. We're used to like focusing, and at the same time, there is sort of like an aperturing on every single like lens that they produce, so we can basically decide on what kind of aperture to shoot in. So we're used to it. But however, if you're coming from digital, you will be confused when using this lens because digital is mostly automatic, and most lenses nowadays are all automatic, and we let the camera do its job, while not many people have that opportunity to shoot with manual. But this lens gives you the opportunity to shoot with sort of like a manual focus, and by getting used to it, you might become a better photographer because it makes you want to think like where you want that focus to be, and at the same time it makes you want to think what aperture to shoot in instead of having the camera to shoot in auto mode. So going back on topic, because this is an f2 lens, this is completely small, compact, and lightweight. Lightweight, I'm not sure if that's the right word because this is like made out of 100% metal alloy, which is really durable, can face a beating. Okay, so in terms of sort of like the aperture, actually, there's like, for manual focus lens, there's like two types. There's a clickable type and a declickable type. There are pros and cons. This one, the 50mm f2, is a clickable type, meaning that when you basically change the aperture, it basically clicks into place. Actually, sticking that BTS for you guys. The pros of that is that because it's sort of like clicked into a specific location, once it's locked in, it won't move. No, well, if you put force, it will move actually. And if you want to like shoot at a specific like f-stop throughout the shoot or something, this is much better. While there are declickable ones, which basically have a smooth aperture flow, if I'm right, which will appeal more for video shooters, because if you're shooting video, what's important is not the footage but more like the audio. And can you guys hear it? When you're changing the aperture, you can basically hear that going on, and if you're shooting video, you don't want that to happen, and that makes this a much more sort of like perfect companion for photography, not for video. However, like I never use other lenses from TT Artisan, so I can't vouch like what their other lenses are like, if all their lenses, their lineup is like clickable or not. But I own 7 Artisans, and I know that 7 Artisans are mostly declickable, so they're mostly made for videos, and at the same time you can shoot like photos with it, so we won't have problems. But this lens in particular is more for photography, so keep that in mind. Another important thing that I need to mention is the lens and the sort of like camera combination will have a different effect. And what I'm trying to say is, like I said, I use this on a Fujifilm camera, and if you guys know, Fujifilms throughout their range are all APS-C type of cameras. APS-C is basically a digital camera that has a crop sensor, a smaller sensor compared to full frame. And what I'm trying to say is, when you put this lens on a crop sensor, when you put this lens on a sort of like a crop sensor, there is this crop factor because the area of the sensor is smaller. Although this is like a 50mm lens, you had to factor in that, so which is like 1.5. So although this is a 50mm focal length, this becomes 50mm multiplied by 1.5. It becomes like a 75mm, 80mm. I think it's 75. I did my math right. So it becomes like a sort of like a semi-telephoto type of lens. And interesting enough, if I'm right, they make the exact same optical design for full frame and micro four thirds, if I'm right. And what I'm trying to say is that when you shoot this lens on a crop sensor, it's not using what you call the whole area of the lens. It's basically, like I said, this becomes a telephoto lens. So you guys know, wide angle focal length, you're basically using the middle part of the lens and not the outer part of the lens. And when I shot this, a lot of people who shot it, and Japanese YouTubers who shot this with a full frame A7R or something, A7S, said that when you shoot this lens on a full frame, you get a lot of vignettings. However, when you shoot this on a crop sensor, so probably micro four thirds, and if you're using Fujifilm, APS-C sized of camera, you won't get vignetting at all. And this was like really surprising. I was expecting some kind of vignetting to go when shooting with this lens, but it never happened, so that kind of shocked me. So I'm trying to like say that if you're shooting with a full frame, you will get some kind of vignetting. Vignettings, basically the corners will look dark, and most like vintage lenses have that look. The center is really sharp while the outer focus area is less sharp and it's like darker, so it has some kind of like vintage like feel to it. After shooting at the coffee shop, I basically had time and I went the other way around and went to the western part of Tokyo, to Takahata-Hudo, which is famous for a temple. There's actually a very large temple there, and it's, I guess, the largest temple on the western part of Tokyo, if I'm right, 30 minutes away from Shinjuku Station. And I basically like brought this camera, and brought this lens and camera to Takahata-Hudo to see how this would perform. So in terms of image quality, I have to admit that especially wide open f2, f2.8, f4 maybe, there was this haziness, if I'm right, or less contrasty type of sort of like image going on when using this lens. People might like it, people might hate it. I thought personally that this haziness was going beyond my expectation, and it's like putting a sort of like a soft focus filter on a really sharp lens, you know? I mean, that's one way of like achieving film, like using a sort of like a soft focus type of like filter, which I need to talk about sometime in my future videos. But yeah, this like lens has this haziness going on. It's like less contrast, less sharp. So I mean, people might like it, people might hate it, like I said. And I was like really neutral about this, but when you like stop it down around 5.6 f8, f11 or somewhere around there, it starts to act as a typical lens. And because I keep saying it over and over again, I use this on a crop sensor camera, but this becomes 85mm. So basically the center of the lens is being used, not the outer part. So I could not tell what it would look like on the outer part. I mean, if you use a full frame, you will understand probably the real characteristics of this lens. But I use it on a full, not a full frame camera, unfortunately, on a crop sensor. So I can only give you my type of like review on the Fuji film system, and at the same time basically shot in different like film simulation mode for reference. And I shot in classic neg standard and classic neg high, and in the end I shot with Provia, if I'm right. And Provia is basically my go-to sort of like film simulation when I'm shooting outside, shooting in JPEG actually, so for reference purposes. What surprised me the most is that when you get everything correct in terms of like outer focus area, if everything clicks into place, it looks really nice, especially this shot, the what you call the statue, something fell, the statue of the what you call Ojizo-san at Takahata Fudo. If you can look at the outer focus area, it looks really nice. But when you shift the lens sort of towards the light source, there's this sort of like ghosting flaring going on. And some people will dislike it. I actually don't like this type of sort of like flare ghosting kind of thing going on. But when it's sort of like not directly at the sun, it produces really nice results when you have some greenery in the background. So yeah, all in all, I think for less than $100, this is a bargain. I mean, I was like surprised that it does create that vintage look if you're looking for that look. And like I said, because I use this on an APS-C camera, the look will probably differ if you use sort of like a full frame camera, if I'm right. So keep that in mind. And also, this is like really shocking that I never like to talk about technical stuff because everyone talks about technical stuff and you guys should never look at the technical stuff, but there are some important parts to like mention, which is the amount of aperture blades in this lens. And it's like, it blows me so much that if you know about lenses, like the older lenses typically have less aperture blades, aperture diaphragm blades actually. And aperture diaphragm blades is basically the blades that basically when you close in the aperture, these sort of like diaphragm kind of fan looking like blades close in. Depending on the amount of those would have a different impact in your overall image, especially in the outer focus area. And basic knowledge for you guys, the sort of like less diaphragm frames, fans, or whatever you call it, the more rigorous the outer focus area will look, and the more there are, the more pleasing it will look. So a typical vintage lens have like roughly 6 to probably 7, 8, 9 diaphragms, if I'm right. And I don't know how much my Nikon has, Nikon 50mm 1.8 has, but it has something around that range, 6 or 7 if I'm right, or maybe 8. And the outer focus area, I mean, for some it might look less appealing, but ouch. This one in particular has 10, which is mind-blowing. I mean, back in the days, a lot of like meisters tried to like make these aperture blades much, more what you call rounder, because by making it rounder, the outer focus looks much pleasing to the eye. And they got to the point of like 8 or 9, if I'm right, max. And nowadays it's easy to like make lenses around 10, but when you consider the price of less than $100 and putting like 10 diaphragms in this like lens, it's like really mind-blowing. It's like really cost efficient, and like I said, the outer focus area, when it clicks into place, it looks really amazing in my eyes. And at the same time, I'm also surprised like how many like mounts that are available for this type of lens, like Leica SL mount, Sigma mount, Sony mount, Nikon Z mount, Nikon. Oh, they don't have the F mount. They have the Fuji X mount, micro four thirds, and also EF M mounts, the mirrorless for Canon cameras. So that's like really surprising that they have almost everything covered on this really affordable, cheap lens actually. So it's like really surprising. And the image quality for some might appeal for a lot of people. In my mind, like I said, it has a lot of haziness, which I actually do not like. But if it's a look that you're looking for, it's a great purchase. And yeah. And I never talked about the downsides actually besides the haziness. And another downside that I found with this lens is the minimum focusing distance of 50 centimeters. And I'm used to like shooting like lots of because I shoot YouTube videos, I need to shoot macro shots and stuff like that. So I'm used to like shooting around 30 centimeters, 40 centimeters. That's sort of like my range. This camera can only shoot up to 50. So you have to considerably like stand a little bit back, maybe like a half a step backwards in order to get your nearest like area in focus. So that was like a bummer for this lens, but for this size, I mean, you had to make sacrifices, and I guess that's one of the sacrifices that they made. And also I have to mention in the last part of the video that this lens itself does not come with a lens hood or lens hood. It comes with a lens cap, which is a screw-in type into the filter. So if you're using like a filter in front of this lens and putting this on, it might feel weird, I guess. And another thing I need to point out is another negative is the filter thread on this is 42 mil, and which is not that widely accepted in the public in photography world. Filter threads around this size is more like 43 mil. Fujifilm's like 43 mil. One step above that is 49 mil. Above that is 52 mil, 55 mil, 58 mil, 62 mil, 68 mil. Well, 68 mil, does that exist? 72 mil, and then 82 mil. So 42 is obtrusive, if I'm right, if that's the word, a unique filter thread. So if you're using filters, I think you might have issues finding something that could accommodate this filter size. So yeah. Hope you enjoyed this video, this overview and review and shooting out with this lens actually. So yeah, hope you enjoyed this video. So yeah, we'll see you next time. Peace out. And if you have any questions, leave it in the comments below. Happy to reply. So yeah, cheers.